Welcome to Journey Through the Gate, your paranormal portal podcast, as we delve into the many questions and wonders brought on by the supernatural experience. What's on the other side of the gate? Let's find out together. Welcome, listeners, and tonight I've got the hair is already standing up on my arms tonight, and I'll tell you what that means. It's an electricity. When you get a connection with somebody, you can just feel it, whether it's a smile from across the room or a smile you get off a page that you read someone's words and they connected with your thoughts, they connected with your feelings, and the idea that you had and thought you were maybe the only one. Well, tonight, through a odd set of circumstances, I met a gentleman, and actually he introduced himself to me by listening to a couple of episodes on other shows, and said, I want to talk to you. And we have so many things in common. So without further ado, the lights are dimmed. The candles are lit. The protection prayer is put out there, and we're getting just good vibes all night long. And let me introduce you to who's going to walk us through the gate tonight. And I think it's going to be a lovely stroll and a terrific journey. And his name is Mr. Kevin Killen. And he wrote a book called Ghosts and Me. Kind of right up our alley. So without further ado, come on in here, Kevin. How you doing?
I'm doing fine, Cisco. How about yourself?
Oh, wonderful. I'm so excited to talk to you. And I just know the listeners going to love this convo tonight because, it's on our topic. And boy, what a topic, huh?
Absolutely. Yeah. Like I said, when I liked the introduction because I got that vibe from you when I listened to you. I was like, yeah, I need to talk to her. So I was like, I got to reach out.
That's so cool. And how cool, what a time we live in, huh? I mean, I read your book, and I was picking up from the beginning and how you started it and everything. And I highly recommend it, guys, Ghosts and Me. And we're going to tell them right now, so we don't forget where to get all that. Is Amazon's books, where?
Sure. You can get it at Amazon.com. You can get it at OzarkMountain.com. That's the publishing company. You can get it at BarnesandNoble.com, I think Walmart.com, and pretty much any .com that sells books.
Awesome. Ghost.com. But anyway,
yes.
Yeah, it's just neat because we had a lot of similar journeys together, I think, separately and, separated by a couple of decades there. And one of the first connections I had with you when I read your words was your search for understanding. And I don't know if understanding is the correct word. I mean, I always try to say maybe not answers as much as just, I don't really need to have all the answers. I just want to understand what's happening. Is that kind of what you were doing, when you were younger?
Yeah, because, with anything when you're young and you learn something, you come across something you don't understand, you obviously, if it interests you, you definitely want to try and know what this is and kind of pull it apart. And I know some people are more mechanical in that way than I am. But me being a Virgo, I'm a perfectionist, and I overanalyze everything. I overthink everything, and I'm trying to get better at that. But again, that's my birth chart, so I have a hard time doing that. But yeah, it was just one of those things, and again, back then when these things first started happening to me, there wasn't much out there where I could actually reference and say, oh, well, so and so went through this. That's exactly what I went through. I had a hard time, and of course, when you're that age and then you get older, people think you were crazy. So you didn't want to open up about these things hardly at all for fear of people, okay, I'm backing away slowly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That kind of thing. And yeah. So it was just, it's been a journey. And much like you, I still don't understand or know anything.
Sure. That's pretty much it. I mean, I've been searching, I want to say a little over 50 years. You know what I mean? And I know that sounds strange, but you can say that you've kind of been looking for answers since you were like 5 or 6 too. And people, when you say that to them, unless it's happened to them, they have a hard time wrapping their head around, oh, yeah, sure, at 5. No, seriously. It doesn't mean you're a paranormal investigator with an EVP, meter and all this other stuff, but you had an experience that happened to you. Yours was the footsteps, was it not? When your mom was saying, tell us about that, how it's kind of sort of started manifesting for you.
Sure. When I was 5, I lived in an old home in Evanston, Illinois, right outside of Chicago. My father was a journalist, and he used to go out of town to cover a lot of things. So at this particular day, he took 3 of my older brothers out with him, and it was just me and my mother. So we were eating dinner downstairs in the living room, and I clearly heard footsteps across the wooden floor by the bedrooms. And I turned to my mother and I said, "Who's that?"
Mm-hmm.
And she said, "Oh, that's my little boy." And I was puzzled because I was the only little boy that I knew of in that house. And then she told me later she did that because she didn't want to scare me, and she didn't know what else to say because she thought somebody had broken in.
Mm.
But I had distinctly heard these footsteps across a wooden floor, very deliberate and methodical, walking up and down that hallway. And that was my first experience, and I've had them ever since.
Right. Now, before I let you go on, at 5, okay? Now let that sink in, people, because Steve, who is my sometime co-host and co-author with me in the book I wrote, we keep telling people his experience was very young. I believe he was 6 or 7, and I believe mine was somewhere around 4-ish. Now, there were earlier things, but they were snippets. You have a profound experience like that is imprinted on your memory at a young age, and you carry it with you all your life. It's not, to some people who have a hard time remembering what they had for lunch yesterday, that's hard to wrap your head around and believe. But it happens. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And, a lot of people, they'll say that. And I remember listening to a show a while ago, and somebody had actually said, I think it was one of the ghost shows. I think it was actually the great Art Bell, actually.
Wonderful.
I believe he actually said, when he did one of his, and he used to do those fabulous Halloween ghost story shows, and I used to love those.
Yes.
He used to say, when you had your first paranormal experience, you never forget it, and he's absolutely right.
100%.
I've never forgotten that and never will.
Right. And it imprints, on your psyche. It's that thing that you just cannot wrap your head around. And I think when your mom said that to you, it kind of solidified in your mind, what do you mean? I'm, it, like in your book you wrote, I'm your little boy. I'm right here. There's no other little boy here. And it's so bizarre to try to mesh your reality with what's going on, even as a young child. Now, I guess, and that's what happened to me too. And for me, it was when I saw, this apparition, and everything kind of played out after that. And I think that was the first time something happened to me like that, where my family became involved because they ran into the room, and then my sister said something that made me believe that she had seen what I saw too at an earlier time. So that, there it was cemented in my memory. And I think that's what happened to you too. I mean, if your mom hadn't said something like that, it might not have, been so permanent. Do you see what I mean? If you just heard footsteps or something and, that's just the
right.
wind.
I probably would have just discounted that.
But it did it the way it was, and I thought that was just very profound. And by repeating that for the listeners, there might have been somebody else, that's what happened for them too, because you find in this that we're all seeking or answers or fascinated with the subject, usually around the same reasons. We've had experiences. Or something like that happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Now, you wrote the book about kind of very much like mine, were like a guided tour through a haunted life. you've kind of, whether you want to say haunted life or not, but experiences throughout. What was the next one that was profound for you? Was it the footprint?
I think the next one that was really profound for me. I mean, I had little experiences, I think, leading up to that, but nothing like the first EVP I captured, which was
fabulous
just
story.
it was
Tell us.
It was right. I was right after high school, and I had been having experiences in my room. By this time I had moved to Falls Church, Virginia, and grew up in a house that was about 40 years old. It wasn't very, one of the older ones. I think obviously the one in Evanston was like turn of the century, and that was just spooky in itself, just because it was so old. By the time we were there, it was almost 100 years old. So this one was a picnic compared to that one. But I'd been having experiences with footsteps in my room up to that point.
Mm-hmm.
And what would they would walk around the room, and again it was another wooden floor, and I think there's something about wood, and I think I know that we've had those discussions with how energy can seep into certain things like wood, so maybe that's what it is, but I'm not really sure. But what would happen every night, I would hear footsteps in that room. They would walk up to the bed and they walk away, and they would walk kind of like around in a circle. And this was like a nightly occurrence. And, I never saw anything or heard anything after that or before that. I didn't really say anything to my family because, my family was kind of one of those that they really, I don't think they would have believed me even if I had. And also, we had, it was never really quiet in that house. There was always something going on. So there was always, someone, there's always people around, noises and everything. So, they probably never heard anything anyway. But this one particular night, I actually had no one in the house. And I decided, you know what? Hey, I'm going to try this EVP stuff. So I went ahead and popped in the Maxell tape. I had one of those boom boxes with the detachable speakers for some of your older listeners that do remember.
Remember them well.
So I think it was about an hour. It was a 60-minute tape. So I went ahead and did that, and I asked the tape. I said, if there's anything here, please show me. So I went ahead and hit the play and record button, went to a friend's house for maybe about an hour and a half, came back. Tape had been finished. I rewound it and went ahead and played it. And I didn't get anything for most of the tape other than the white noise, but maybe the last minute and a half of the tape, I got, first of all, it sounded like something was beating on top of the machine, which was really creepy because there was nobody in the house.
Right.
Then I got some weird bleeps and blips, and then finally at the very end, maybe the last 10 seconds or so, this very low guttural voice that I have shown you, ha ha.
Ooh.
And that made me almost fall out of my chair. I literally ran down the stairs and out of the house because I was so freaked out because it actually answered my question, and it was a very deep guttural voice.
Whew. Wow. Okay, let's process that. So I remember the boombox as well, and I remember the Maxell tapes, and it's just so funny. I love stuff that takes me back, Yeah. But when we take you back to that being in your room, okay, I've got these footsteps. It's happening every night. They're walking up to the bed, which is in itself creepy, listeners. I mean, think about that. You've got these footsteps, and not only are you hearing footsteps, but they're coming towards you while you're in bed. And then moving away, and then coming back. And you're never seeing anything. There's no sparkle, there's no light, there's no shadow, correct? Mm-hmm. You're just hearing them,
Yeah.
And you decide to go ahead and get this Maxell tape. Now, think about it. When I read this, I thought to myself, the son of a gun who left the EVP not only answered your question, and probably beat on the box for loud noises or whatever, but... and the fact that it was a low, slow, guttural, phrase that it left. But it waited to the end of the daggum tape. So I wondered, did it know enough to think, this son of a gun's going to sit here and listen to the whole thing. And at the very end, just when he thinks nothing's going to happen, bam. I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
We don't know what they know. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, and you're right. I think, and I, read other things about certain things where that does happen every once in a while. So yeah, I mean, that just also begs the question, what was this? And did they know? And how did they know? That's pretty, that's pretty prolific to know exactly when the tape is going to end. I'm going to hit you with that.
Right. And to know that you're going to sit there because, we tend to think that, if you are talking about a human spirit, we think that I don't know what we think sometimes, because I have so many questions about people say, well, ghosts can't do this, can they? And I'm like, what kind of ghost are you talking about? What does the ghost know? What is its energy like? What is it? Do you see what I'm saying? And we don't even know.
Oh, yeah.
We don't even know if the voice, whatever was, on that tape, or whatever was producing the voice, was even a human spirit. Could have been an entity of some other type. So it could know a whole lot more than we do. So to me, when I read that, I just got that chill. Not only because of thinking what I had said, it waited to the very end. It said, I've shown you, haha, and the way it sounded. But the fact that I think there was a knowing there. And it was kind of making you wait for it. And then something happened after the fact, did it not? I mean, didn't something happen to the tape?
Yeah, the tape actually, it was eaten. And I actually, and that really, really upset me, because then, of course, I had no proof at all, because it was just my word.
Yep.
But then I had found out later from reading that is typical with those particular things, that does happen quite frequently, because I guess maybe the spirits don't want us to know anything.
And it was also, so it almost, to me, sounded like it was kind of setting you up for the highest fear factor it could hit you with. It made you wait,
Right.
and as you're listening, you're probably thinking, there's nothing on here, I'm going to quit. No, I'm going to stick with it. That kind of thing, I think about that all the time when I'm watching, all these ghost shows on. And if you think about it, if they're doing 8 hours of tape, somebody's got to sit there and look through that, all that tape.
Oh, yeah.
And, it's so, sometimes these things happen so quick on the video or on the, on the recording, the sound recording, that you could miss it if you're not paying attention. So, I mean, I think they play with us sometimes. I really do. And I think you got really, I don't want to say you got played, but I think you did. But you also got creepy.
I think you're right. Yeah. Like I say, because again, that's one thing I've discussed before is I don't even know if that was a trickster spirit, because I do have tricksters in my family, and it could have been one of my forefathers or whatever, just wanting to mess with me. But I've also had the ones that wouldn't have done that. They would have come back, just screamed at me, because they were that kind of person. So yeah, it kind of makes me wonder, really, it could have been playing with me. I can see that.
Yeah. And we could, we also tend to forget that I had heard you on another interview, and I'm like, that's it. That's correct. Because we forget that if we are talking about, the essence of something that used to be, that was human, at least on our form, and then it's moved on and changed its, it's still human, still carries the characteristics. You're going to have, people that play jokes on you and tricks on you, stuff like that, in when they were alive, are going to do it when they were dead too, because that's their personality. And you had said,
Absolutely.
if they're a jerk, they're going to be a jerk when they're dead too. If they haven't crossed over, I mean, that's my working theory right now. If they cross over, they seem to change. They get more enlightened. They work through some of those human things, but they still have their human, some of their human characteristics. There just seem to be a little kinder and a little bit more knowing,
Yes.
and take things and a little more loving. Let's put it that way. But if you haven't crossed over, and this is my thing, I always say, if you're an asshole when you're alive, you're an ass soul when you're dead, if you haven't crossed over.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah, it's so true. That's just, like we say, we've both been in this a long time, and I got a couple of, maybe a decade and a half on you, but still, it's a long journey of collecting, data, and, just trying to just put every little puzzle pieces, and we just have these great big holes in it, because I don't know whether the bullseye keeps moving or if we're not supposed to know, and I think that's it. It's like the great mystery novel, and we don't have that last chapter, and maybe we don't even have it afterwards, because when they come back to give us little little things if they've crossed over. They don't seem to, I don't want to say be able to tell us. I don't think they're allowed to for some reason. No, I can't tell you that. You have to find that on your own. That kind of stuff, So,
I think, I honestly think that's true.
uh-huh,
I think that we're not supposed to know,
uh-huh,
and they kind of, like you said, they throw us little crumbs,
uh-huh.
but that's it.
Yeah.
And actually, somebody actually asked me a question: if I could know all about this, would I want to? And I said no, because I've just had so much fun trying to find out this now. I'd be heartbroken because I'd be like, oh, so this is all what this is about. Now there's nothing else. So
Right.
yeah, I said no, I wouldn't want to know.
Right, right. I think what we do want to know, it depends again, like we said in the beginning. A lot of people are intrigued by this topic or fascinated by the topic, or, just keep digging because they had an experience they're trying to explain, and then that took them to the next experience or a next happening or an uncanny something or other. And we keep just, jumping across, hitting those rocks across this great river, of
Right.
not knowing. And, then you have the people that are just never had an experience, but they're just intrigued by the whole possibility of it, and they're trying to get that evidence. I don't know whether they're trying to prove it to other people or trying to prove it to themselves or both.
Right.
There's just so many different things here. And that's just talking about ghosts and whether or not there is an afterlife, or if we carry on, if our energy changes into another form, what happens,
Exactly.
And then when you start bringing all the different flavors into it, if you want to bring in religion, you want to bring in, all that other stuff, that just adds to it and adds more and more layers. And then there's the other thing, of course, fear. What happens to me when is this
Right.
it? There's that. And then there's fear for a loved one. Is my loved one okay? And that, I think, is probably, those last two, I think, are the biggest motivators, even over experience. Because we just keep digging. We want to just tell me my pet's okay. Tell me mom's cool.
Yeah.
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 I think those are the great motivators in a lot of this too. But usually, like I said, for somebody like you and I, who've had experiences very young and then peppered throughout life, it really just keeps the wheels grinding, doesn't it? Well, there's something I never saw before. What was that?
Right. Exactly.
It's just amazing. It really is. And then you get to talk to great people and hear their stuff. And
Yes.
when I heard the EVP, my wheels just started turning, and I'm thinking, how many stories or how many guests have I had on here that did that? I'm going to get my own EVP. I've heard reel-to-reel tape players. I've heard all kinds,
Yep.
depending on the decade, but they get that one, and then they try to play it
Yeah.
for other people and it won't play. And they're like,
Yep.
I
Exactly.
know I heard what I heard. And I think the one that you got is still kind of creeps you out a little bit, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When I told you that story,
Yeah.
I obviously automatically go back to that time, and the hairs raised up on my arms,
Yeah.
because I was like, yeah, it took me right back to that time, and yeah, it still freaks me out to this day.
Right. Well, I got two questions here.
Sure.
One, did you ever hear that voice again?
No, I did not.
Okay. Two, do you think it was something? Now, this is just a think, because unless you have something else to go on, it's just a guess. Do you think that was something that was attached to the place you were in? Or do you think it was something that is somewhat attached to you?
I think it was attached to the place, and the
Okay.
reason I say that is I go into this a little bit in the book, that my brothers and my mother unfortunately had substance abuse issues, and their friends did the same thing. So it was almost like a constant party at my house,
Right.
So there was a lot of negativity floating around that house, and I actually referred to the house at one point in time as sad, is because I just got a very sad feeling in that house. And also at that time, I was starting to get into some occult stuff that I should not have been getting into. I was, the Satanic Bible. I was reading a lot of demonology stuff, just, things I probably shouldn't have been into. So I'm thinking, I think it may have been there, and that kind of woke it up.
Yeah, I agree. And again, we have another connection here because one of the most haunted, which is a bizarre term if you think about it, because you could be living in an extremely haunted house and not even know it. But you know what I mean? But something we often talk about on this show is how energy draws energy, like draws like. So being the fact that you did talk about that being a sad house and people were having what I call cracks in your windshield. Basically, it's a good windshield, but you got that crack. And the more that crack gets pushed on, the more it splinters and spider webs into multiple cracks, and then it becomes very fragile. And we have that as human beings. So if you're into drug abuse or you're just depressed, and then you just kind of spiral, you start circling the drain, and different entities and even human ghosts that are going through the same thing or might have passed under those conditions, or just, they're depressed, they're sad, angry, whatever, they're going to be drawn to that. So I thought that was very wise that you said that in the book, because it takes people don't realize that. They'll often say, how many times have you heard this? Well, the house can't be haunted, nobody died here.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work that way. And even to this day, 2 days ago, I heard a very intelligent person talking about a situation, and he said the same thing. He said, well, my house can't be haunted. Nobody's died here. I've looked into it. And I'm like, okay, what about the ground? Has anything ever happened on that ground? Has anything ever happened to you? Ghosts, people can be haunted too, which is,
exactly.
I was wondering, now I'm going to ask you, I don't know if you want to talk about this. If you don't, that's perfectly fine. But as you moved through that time, when you were starting to delve into different things and probably seeking answers, I mean, gosh, if you're in that mindset, you start to get, go down that path sometimes. But there was a time, I think a little bit later on in life, where you kind of had two different attachments to you, did you not? One was good and one was not so good.
Yes.
Okay. Do you feel like talking about that or no?
Sure. Oh,
okay.
That's fine. Totally fine. As a matter of fact, I was actually talking to Cheryl today. Who's the one that opened up with the seance to have the attachment, my psychic witch girlfriend for 10 years.
Okay.
That I reference quite often in the book. I was actually talking to her today. I wanted her to read me, so that she hadn't read me in a while. And then with 2020 going crazy, I was just seeing how she was, that she was going to be able. But again, I'm going through some stuff right now that we talked before.
Right.
That I would have a terrible reading. My energy's awful right now, so I told her, I said, well, let's hold off on that. But no, I can totally talk about that. I mean, we can talk about the bad one first, because that one I actually was speaking to her about that today, so that's coincidental that we bring that up. She had actually forgotten about a lot of that. So
isn't that funny? Something so big for us, and you got, well, how could you ever forget that? It was like a big thing for me. Yeah, I get it. Yeah,
exactly. So basically what had happened is, this was like in the 90s, and I was in school in Pennsylvania, southwestern Pennsylvania, and at the time I was dating her, and she was doing a lot of this, maybe a little bit of mentoring and teaching me a lot of the stuff about the paranormal and witchcraft and things and different things like that. But we had good friends of ours that were the boyfriend of the woman was a staunch skeptic. I mean, he wouldn't believe any of this. So his girlfriend was, adamant, because she's had experiences. She was adamant, you have to believe this because this does happen. And he was like, yeah, well, okay, whatever. So we decided to do a seance and channeling session to see, to show him, like, hey, there is stuff out there. Well, during this channeling session, this being, I don't know what it was, but it was very evil looking. showed up in all of our heads at the same time, and we jumped back and broke the circle because it scared us because we weren't expecting that. So for the next few weeks, we all had really negative experiences happen, and my personality actually changed. And I don't use possession often because I don't think that's what was going on. I think it was starting to oppress, actually. But my personality changed from a happy-go-lucky nice guy to a really angry, depressed, hard drinker who didn't want to talk to anybody. I would sit in the dark. I would unplug the phone. I wouldn't answer the door. Things like that. And I knew this wasn't me. I mean, I could hear myself in my head saying, this isn't you, but I was just like this weight, like a wet blanket over me. Like I couldn't shake this thing, but I knew it wasn't me. So finally, I went ahead and called Cheryl. I said, look, something's going on here. I'm not right. Nobody else is. We've all had incidents. We have to do something. And she said, Kevin, that's my fault. I didn't close the circle when we did this. We need to do this. And so we finally did. And luckily we were able to close that circle. That thing went away or went elsewhere, and we all went back to what we did. Basically, we got back to ourselves. Unfortunately, the guy and the man and the woman actually ended up breaking up, and they've had a lot of bad experiences since then. He actually wrecked his motorcycle and almost died.
Oh no.
They don't see him too much, but he's had a lot of bad things happen to him. And I don't know if it's attributed to this, but he never, and again, he would never come out and say he believed even after this, but he knew something wasn't right. And that's about as far as he would go. And he would clam up. He would never talk to anybody. And as far as I know, to this day, he will still not mention that. If you mention that to him, he will change the subject because it's just something that I guess traumatized him.
Sure. Yeah, sorry guys, we had a little technical issue as usual on this show. Boy, we start talking about stuff. I mean, all the crazy stuff. My computer just went nuts. All right, Kevin, we are back. You were saying, sorry again for that break, but you were saying that your friend just like wouldn't admit, or want to talk about anything, but all these things kept happening to him, which is not the first time I've heard that one,
Yeah. And before I go back into that, just want to let you know that usually when things like this happen, it's me.
and
I suffer from technical difficulties every time I do these shows, and I just tell people it's me.
Yeah. Well, it happens with me a lot, but the most of the time it happens when Steve and I are on. Steve Stockton and I are talking, and he starts talking about the black-eyed kids. I got pictures falling off the wall. I got, my oven buzzer and timers going off, and I didn't have anything in the oven. I've got stuff going on outside. It's just crazy. And apparently now with you, too. I guess our energies together,
yes.
But that's nuts. But the thing is, too, where she said she didn't close the circle and she had to go back and remove it. A lot of times, we always say don't mess with things. You don't, if you open a door, you have to close it. And that's basically
right.
What you were describing, because this thing seemed to start to take you over. And I'm sure at the time that you were, they say it's an oppression. There's stages. It starts taking you over.
Yes.
Obviously, it took you a lot deeper than we'd like to admit here, because I've seen it, and it's a slow boiling of the frog, if you know what I mean. It's like at first,
yes.
you don't really realize it, and then, boy, man, it's getting hot in here, And I'm so glad you pulled yourself out of that and then sought help. And it seems like maybe your friend... It might have took him a little bit more. I don't think that it went back. I think it moved on to possibly him. Do you see what I'm saying?
Right. And I actually thought of that later on. And the more I talk about that experience, that I think that's probably exactly what did happen. It just moved on to him.
Yeah, because your intent, you started to see what was going on in your intent. Intent is so strong, and I've heard you mention that before on other things as well. And Tony Bruschi from Real Ghost Stories Online, I've known him for years now, and I used to call into his shows all the time because he'd have questions, and I'd try to explain to him, a little bit about whatever the subject was. And then I start telling my experiences and my ghost stories, and pretty soon people would start asking questions, and he'd say, well, let's ask Cisco, and I'd call in, that kind of thing. But, I'd try to explain to him about the intent, and he likes to say that if you just stand in the house and say, you can't do this, I need you to stop doing this, that most of the time things will stop. And I tell him it all depends on what you're dealing with.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? I'm glad your friend knew a little bit more about energies and, through her Wicca and, Wiccan practices and things like that. It's very about energy and nature and seizing that and trying to take control. So I'm very glad that you were able to pull out of that. Was anybody else in the house affected? Or you said your family was already being affected by... Was this the sad house or no?
No, this was a different house, actually.
Okay.
But yeah, the place where we actually had it was the man who got affected by his girlfriend, and she'd had experiences before, and she actually had, microwaves went on the fritz, her car broke down, things happened with her kids. So that's what happened with her, and we were all affected in those ways.
Wow. Well, I'm very glad that that's gone, and and now your energy is so strong. I mean, I can feel it. Your energy and your intent and your kind of your thought process and your being is stronger. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And that's what makes all the difference. I often say we all have that divine spark. And we have the strength. We are the light, and we have to project that out. It's like, no, you will not do this. There's a difference between standing in your house and telling a ghost, quit rapping on the walls. You're bugging me, and then telling something else that has a lot more strength that was never human. This isn't happening. It's a different, there's two different things there. So you said that you had also a good one that was with you. And do you think that possibly the good one came to possibly protect you from this other thing?
I never really thought about that, but honestly, I could see that. I've been told that I've had protectors. I know I have because I described an incident later in the book with something that was dark and evil that I was actually protected by animals. So that was kind of neat. I think this one, I don't know if she was a protector or not, but I think she was here for a reason, obviously, than what she really was there for. Like I said, what she would do is we were actually in another house. I had actually moved back to Virginia at this point. And this was an older house. This was I think it was built in the 50s or the 60s. Again, it wasn't a very old house. But I got to say this, that whoever built this house... The bathroom that this happened in was quite hideous. It had a pink sink. Now think about this, a pink porcelain sink.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. I've seen them.
So I don't know if it was something from the 70s or what, but it was a pink sink, all pink. And then the floors were tile. They were black and white, like a checkerboard.
I was going to say horrible. Black and white checkered floor, yeah. I was going to say it. That's like so 50s. That's like early 50s. I believe. I could be off on that. I'm certainly not a licensed plumber.
I just always hated that bathroom because it was such a hideous, design. With the color schemes. I always used to laugh at that.
It's like a taxi,
again,
like the old taxis in New York.
And the outside of the house was like pea yellow.
Oh hey.
Yeah, so it was. Yeah, it was just maybe the colors were
Art Deco, maybe.
They hated it too, the spirits, so they just had to haunt us because they hated the colors as much as I did. I don't know.
Maybe it was the person who put in that tile in that sink and knew you didn't like it and was going to give you a bad time about it. Because the funny thing is I don't care what decade you're in, but when you're redoing a bathroom and you go over and you're picking out the colors, and listen, man, they used to be a big thing. I mean, I lived through the 70s when it was avocado and gold, and there was another one that was the big colors. And I remember when my aunt redid the whole house, and everything was it was that green, and everything in the bathroom were gold, and I just it was hideous because it was a muted gold. It wasn't a pretty shiny gold, So I get it.
Yeah. And Yeah, and I actually, I tell people to this day, and some people don't understand this, but you will understand this. I am haunted by shag carpet. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, and in the 70s, shag carpeting was also in the bathroom. Everything was fur. Even
Yes,
even the even the trash basket was like fur. Like you'd have everything, the
yes,
tank, everything was just, and until they realized black mold kills, you know. It's just funny. But isn't it odd you can go through like an old hotel or something, and if you ever go away and you stay in an older hotel and you go in the bathrooms are so telltale, and you just
absolutely,
don't want to be in there, after you've had a little too much partying the night before and you're feeling sick in the morning. You gotta go in, a pink
exactly.
bath, or yeah, with the checkered. That's funny. But you were there, and there was an entity that was, well, I don't want to say entity, probably a ghost that was helping, a spirit, a good one.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah, we found out later her name was Elizabeth. But what Elizabeth would do is when I would take a shower in that shower, I would feel like a cold swirl around me. And it wasn't like, at first I thought maybe the window was open, the door was open. But, that's impossible because it wasn't a whoosh of wind. It was a swirling sensation around my body as if I was being caressed. And this would happen quite frequently. And it bugged me because I was like, I don't know what this is. So then I asked Cheryl about it, and she said, "Oh, that's Elizabeth." And I said, "Well, who the hell's Elizabeth?" And she said, "Well, that's she. I get the impression that you remind her of her husband, so that's why she joins you in the shower." And I was like, "Well, can we get her to not do that? Because that's getting a little bit personal here." So she said, "Well, if you just let her know, just tell her, say, hey, you feel uncomfortable with, you can stay, but don't join me in the shower."
Right.
So I ended up doing that, and she never joined me in the shower again, and she only stayed with us a little while longer. But yeah, I mean, she was a good attachment. I mean, and
Right.
again, I guess she was maybe a protectorate.
Yeah. Now, that's interesting in so many ways because I'm wondering. I always look. I know it sounds so funny, but and this might be a zigzag. I promise you to be zigzags. You mentioned in one of your interviews how much I want to say I adored Hans Hosler, and because I just devoured his books when I was younger because I found him when I was like 11. This is like early
Yes.
70s. So I found him just when
Yeah.
his books were getting to paperback. And I was like, oh, this is the kind of understanding I wanted. This is it right here. And
Hmm.
I've always kind of taken that path of, I'm in it. If I'm going to a house to help, I'm in it for the ghost. I'm sorry that the homeowners are having a hard time and I'm there for you too. But if I help the ghost, I help you, if that makes
Yes.
sense. And I'm thinking about Elizabeth. Honey, why are you still here? Do you see what I mean? If you're missing your husband, he's probably waiting for you on the other side. We got to get you over there. That's my
Right.
first thoughts. And I'm thinking also from your point of view of, okay, more than once I've seen a ghost of a good essence that is there to protect you from something that's not so good. You see what I mean? More often than
Yes.
not, I see that. And we might not know that battle is going on. But I've seen a little, 90-year-old grandmother ghost who's there holding off just an army of bad to protect a family.
Hmm.
And I think that's
Hmm.
so interesting. Have you heard about this in your walks?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I've definitely heard that, and of course, if you want to go to Hollywood, which I really hate to do because I think Hollywood builds, they embellish so much.
Hmm.
But I believe that was in like Poltergeist. They had that
Hmm.
something that's similar where there was a protectorate spirit that was holding off these things that took care of land.
Hmm.
So it was that was kind
Hmm.
of interesting. But yeah, I've heard of that too, and I can
Hmm.
totally see that.
Sure. And I just, you wonder. Now, I've had things like this happen to me, and I've been involved in cases that have had this happen. And, I've seen personally where it was a young girl who was trying to help the people and the investigators and the people that were in the home. It's like, you don't understand. I'm trying to warn you that he's coming and you need to stop this. Can you imagine the chill that goes down your body when you hear this from a little girl? It's like, I can only hold him off so long, and then it was like,
Right.
What is she talking about? Who's coming? Who's he? But that,
Exactly.
it's crazy. But you know what, Kevin, I think it's this. I think it goes back to that divine spark. I think that there's something about the love energy. There's something about, whatever you want to talk about, like, divine connection or that light that is so much more powerful than the
Right.
bad. Like we say, that one pinpoint of light can, brighten the darkest room, And I just think that, and when you were talking about Elizabeth, I was just getting that feeling that there was a little bit more there that you might not have realized. And now you said you had animals, another strength. Animals are very strong in this. That protected you from something? You think?
Yes.
Tell us.
Yeah, I actually was living in Pennsylvania at the time with one of my exes, and we actually had a lot of weird experiences. And I described her in the book. I didn't disparage her, I don't think, because she still does talk to me. She actually got a hold of me a couple months ago when she found out I wrote a book. So I don't know if she's read it or not, but she was actually very cordial in her email. But anyway, she has a very negative, dark energy about her.
Uh-huh.
And we had a lot of experiences. As a matter of fact, I had my first shadow man experience with her. That I still, was pretty crazy. But at this point in time, we had actually broken up, and I was actually like kind of staying in one of the off rooms of her home until I got, I was going to move out and making plans. I hadn't quite gotten there yet. But it was this one night. We had 2 cats and a dog. And there was like a long corridor. It was a double wide trailer, so there was a long corridor to the living room and then the kitchen, and then this room I was in. I was sitting there watching TV. Well, I got in my mind's eye this blackness coming down the hall, just floating down the hall. It was just this big black cloud, and I could see it in my head, and I was like, "Oh my God, what is this?" So as I said that, I'm sitting on my bed. I had one cat flank me on the left, one cat flank me on the right, and the dog right in the middle of me, forming like a triangle. And this thing stopped at the door, and it stared into the door, and it couldn't come in. For whatever reason, this thing could not come into this room, and I got the sense that it could not. So it stared at the door for a while, and then turned around and floated back the other way. And those animals never left me until that left.
Gosh, that's powerful. And I'm almost like choked up here because I just love animals so much. I just think that they're so wise and just so connected, and absolutely. And they loved you that much. They weren't having it. They were not having it. And I just love that, because I tell people all the time, pay attention to the dogs, pay attention to the cats.
Absolutely.
They can see what we can't see, and they can sense it before it ever gets there. And
Absolutely.
I wonder what human beings have done to themselves to unlearn that. And I wonder how much of it we did have until we started talking ourselves out of it. Intuition. How many times you put it in the book about intuition, and that's something that animals don't talk themselves out of. We were talking before we started recording about getting into nature to ground and, listen to the birds and everything. If you start really, I'm Native American, so, I've been taught snippets of things about nature, and watch the little chickadee. Do you know the little chickadee, the little tiny bird? The little one with the mask, the smallest one in the yard. That little bugger has 27 different calls. Now, I'm no bird expert, but so don't write me if it's 28. But and what she does is she has these different calls because she's warning the rest of the yard, not just her group, but everybody in the yard, that there's a predator coming, and she can sense it. So, and she has
Yeah.
27 different calls, like one for a hawk. Not only does she warn you that there's danger, she tells you exactly where the danger is coming from. Whether it's an owl or whether it's a fox. And I just find that amazing. And the rabbit can sense things, a predator coming, and you'll see, his tail twitches, his body language changes, and he doesn't stop and think, nah, there's nothing going on. It's a nice day. I'm going to stay here and eat this clover. Everything's cool with a whap. But humans
Yeah.
do. Humans do. And those animals knew. Now, did you ever see that again? Do you have any idea what
Yes.
it was?
Yes. Actually, I did. Not what the animals did, but the black shadow did come out of the wall in the bedroom again. But it like floated across and went straight out the wall, the other side. It went like
Wow.
right past me. It was kind of crazy because it was like I was watching this thing, and it was almost like it was trying to hurry. Like it kind of knew, like, oh, I can't be here.
Yeah.
So it kind of just like ran. It was almost
Good.
like running. It was the craziest thing because I
Right.
was thinking about that. But the animals weren't in my room at the time. But this thing came through the wall again and went right out the other side. Like it sped. Like it was going really fast.
Just
So
passing
I never
through.
thought about that till just now.
Wow. Now, you said this was a double wide. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering, again, we've got these questions. Here comes the question marks. Was it something that was on the land? Was it something that was attached to you or somebody else in the house? Was it just something that was passing through? It's crazy, because,
Yeah.
unless you've got multiple different things analyzing this and then everybody gets together and puts together what they got and we can kind of go through the puzzle pieces and get a picture, we really don't
Right.
know. And I heard you say something on an interview too about Pac-Man. Do you remember
Yes.
talking about this? How the old Pac-Man, describe that, please. I thought it was brilliant.
Yes. If I'm fascinated. Like I said, this is one thing that again that we agree on is I believe everything is theory based. There's been nothing proved yet because we have not proven anything.
Right.
So I was actually listening to a guy, I can't remember his name, who wrote a book about multidimensions, and that made a lot of sense to me with quantum physics, which I'm not a math major. I'm an English major, so math is just way beyond whatever. But this guy actually made a lot of sense, and I'm thinking, okay, again, with an open mind, if there is a parallel universe or universes, as it may be, that it's like the Pac-Man game where the Pac-Man can go out one screen and come out the other.
Right.
So it's like a continuous kind of loop thing. So that's how you kind of can see. And what I usually use as an example is there was a couple from Britain not too long ago, maybe actually in the 70s, who were out on an outing, a picnic or something, and they actually saw a Roman legion, come right by their picnic area and didn't pay any attention to them. And they were like, well, what the heck's a Roman legion doing out
Right.
here in Britain? And there was no reenactments or anything. But the fact that they pay no attention to them lends credence to the fact, I think, that if there is multi-dimensions, that this Roman legion came from whatever dimension they came into our dimension and just was doing their thing like they had done, thousands of years ago.
Okay. Big can of worms everywhere. I'm just so intrigued, and all of my just senses, spidey senses are just going off and just like, woohoo, this is wonderful. That's exactly what I think too. Whether you're having, whether it's a rip in time or whether it's an opening a portal, and they're just going through, or it's a bleed over. I mean, how many stories have we heard? I wish Steve was here because he could just spill them out like nobody's business. This is kind of his thing too, where, he's got a story about this, these people are broke down on the side of the road, and then, just a modern couple fixing a tire. And then all of a sudden, everything changes. That kind of, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but you probably have, where it's almost like a sound void. Everything kind of stops for a minute.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And the air changes. And everything changes. Just every sense you can imagine. Everything is different for a second. And then they just, all of a sudden, this car comes out of nowhere. And it's just this couple in this old, like, what do you call it? Model T. type vehicle. They're just having a Sunday drive, and, her scarf is flying in the wind. She's holding on to her hat, and, the guy is dressed in very Great Gatsby kind of look. And they're just driving by and never even look at the people on the side of the road, and they just keep going, and then the car just disappears. Now, what's that? You've got your time slip in the Versailles, the famous one where they saw, Marie Antoinette painting on the lawn, all of a sudden, out of nowhere. All these different time rips. And, you got Skinwalker Ranch, where people have actually stood there and watched this rip almost like it. They described it like it was like just somebody unzipped the space in front of them, and this thing crawled out, steps out, crawls out, just starts walking and disappears off into the dunes. And then it just, closes back up and goes. And then you've got your Bermuda Triangle, planes just gone, wormholes, whatever. I think it's so amazing, and can go off on any kind of thing. Creatures coming over. Cryptids could be this. Cryptids could be something from another dimension, just kind of like fell over here, wanders around a little bit, and bam. And you said something that perked my ears on another interview. Bigfoot. You and I agree on that one. I think Bigfoot knows something we don't know. What do you want to say about that?
Oh yeah, totally. I again, I've been in areas that have been very remote in both Virginia, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania. And the first thing I thought of was like, Jesus, what is out here? Who knows what could be out here? Mm-hmm. And if there is Bigfoot, this would be Bigfoot territory. And I have no doubt that there is. I mean, I've never seen them, but I don't doubt that there's something. And if there is, I think, honestly, this is all interconnected with ghosts, UFOs, Bigfoot. There's some connection there.
And, more and more we're hearing things about like balls of light and energy sparks and things like that being seen, or UFOs, and then a Bigfoot. And I'm wondering... what is that? Is it like energy is just ripe for all this? Is it just ripe for us to see it? It's always there. Is it something that's, there all the time, and we just have, it's something in our perception that changes? Or is it something in the atmosphere that changes? Or is it just, they just accompany each other? I don't know. I don't know, but I certainly think it's cool, because why wouldn't? Just because we don't, or us personally sitting right here, there's probably people who do know how to go back and forth. What makes us think that they don't know how to go back and forth? Or just come over here, say Bigfoot comes over here to hunt and grabs what we, just like it's going out on a hunt trip, just like somebody leaving on a Sunday to go fishing. And they come and get what they want to get, and then they go back over. And maybe that's why we don't ever see the bodies or whatever. And I think that if it's true for them, why wouldn't it be? Something, I mean, I've shared it on this show before. So listeners, if you heard this story, it'd be a good time. You go make your sandwich, because I'm going to tell them this story. When I was little, like I said, I'm Native American, and Lenni Lenape and Cherokee. And my grandmother was born 1890. So when I was little, and I was the youngest of like 9, I got picked to tell all the stuff to, like the herbal cures and the different things in nature and stuff like that. And I don't know if she tried to tell others and they forgot, or they got little snippets and moved on. I don't know, but I was intrigued by it, and she kept telling me. The problem with it was that she was still in the mindset of being in the North. We were in New Jersey at the time. And being that she was born in 1890, she still remembered what it was to admit that you were Native American. It always wasn't a good idea. So it was all secretive. And when she told me stuff, she'd call me over and whisper it to me. Like if somebody heard this, bad things had happened. So we were on one of these herbal gatherings. We were doing sassafras or something. in the woods on one of our walks. And then she told me, she got real serious. And she said, there are things in the woods that we don't talk about, because if you talk about them, they can hear you. They connect into your energy. And I'm like, uh-huh. You know, she's I'm little, and she's looking down on me. And she says, and there are other things that are both here and over there. I'm like, where's over there? She says, over there, more on the other side. Whoa, okay. And she said she says they go back and forth, and she says and it's something that I want you to be careful of. You know, only go on the trails and don't go alone, and let somebody know where you are. You know, okay. And she said, she looked at me, she got real serious, she looked me right in the eye, and she put her hands on my shoulders, and she said, because I don't want him to take you with him. Whoa. If that doesn't send a chill down your little girl's spine, I don't know where's he going to take me? What do you mean? Because he's, you know, half spiritual, you know, that's so crazy. So, you know, when you're going back to native lore and things like that, that's the kind of discussions that you have with the elders, those kind of things.
Right.
So the Bigfoot theory to me fits right in that. Half here, half there.
Right.
You know? Wow.
Yeah, that does that sounds plausible to me. I had a friend back in the 90s who was a good friend of mine. He was actually the husband of a friend of mine's sister, and he was from Louisiana. And we used to talk about crazy things down in the bayou. And he said we were sitting around drinking, hanging out one time, and my friend told me, he said, ask him about what he saw down there by Lake Pontchartrain. So I asked him, he says, and he got real serious, and he looked at me, and this guy's a bodybuilder. He's a big guy. He looked at me, he said, Kevin, I'm going to tell you one time, I'm not going to say anything about that. Leave it alone. And I was like, what the hell? Because this guy was a gentle giant. He was the sweetest man, but he really got serious. He scared me. So when I went home that night, I asked my friend, I said, hey, what happened with Chris? What was up with that? He says, Kevin, man, he saw like a Bigfoot thing with his buddy out there, and he will not talk about it. It scared him. He doesn't know what it was, but whatever it was scared the hell out of him and his friend, and he will not talk about it.
Wow.
So again, you know, and then of course that was before I was actually into all the haunts of New Orleans and everything they got down in Louisiana. So, I was like, well, okay. But yeah, whatever this thing was, you know, he won't talk about it to this day, and it scared him. So who knows? Well,
in Louisiana, not only the Bigfoot, I mean, I've got mixed feelings about the Bigfoot. They don't really scare me. They make me sad. And I don't know what it is about them. I'm being an empath. That's always what I've picked up from them. And a reverence. And I know that sounds crazy because, you know, you've got these Bigfoot shows and all this stuff. I hope they never catch one. I really, because, you know, I can't stand to see animals in a zoo. And I don't think Bigfoot has anything to do with animal. A lot of people back and forth, you know, half human or the missing link or all this stuff. I think it's a totally different creature. And I think it, you know, just like we find out that dolphins and octopus and stuff like that have just this mind, and that, you know, can think, and all animals do. You know what I mean? They have. I am a firm believer, soul, absolute soul. You know, and I'll go one bigger. I think it's a little purer than ours because they don't have all that human jealousy and hatred and anger and war and all the bad things humans do to each other. Animals just aren't like that. So I'd kind of bring them up a little bit. But Bigfoot, you know, it's just leave them alone, you know. But if you're talking Louisiana, you've got things there in that bayou. You got the rougarou, you know, things like that, which is like the Louisiana dogman, you know. And I'm still with dogman. I can't quite. I think it's separate, but I want to know how do we get from werewolf to dogman? What happened to the werewolf? You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah. Yeah.
is it the
Yeah.
same?
Exactly.
Is it the same? Is it possibly that we were seeing dogmen back then and we just made up a story of the werewolf and dogmen have been around all this time? Do you see what I mean? Because we don't
Yeah.
know. But, and then you've got the skinwalkers and things like that, which is a totally different thing
Right.
together.
Right.
So many different things. But I'm right there with you, buddy, on things being able to cross over and back and forth or coming over here. And I'm the big sap that's going to feel sorry for them because they came over here and got lost. I wouldn't want to get lost over here. This place is a mess. But I wanted to ask you before you go about, we both also have another love in common and an intrigue, and that's battlefields. And
Yes.
you were talking about possibly writing another book and centering on investigating Civil War battlefields. Tell us about that.
Yes. Yeah, that's actually my next project. Unfortunately,
Yep.
COVID-19 and the passing of my brother have
God
kind of
bless.
put the kibosh on me getting out to the battlefield and actually getting some research done. However, I still have a goal of December to submit a manuscript to my publisher. And what I'm going to do is I'm in Northern Virginia, which is kind of battlefield central.
Yes.
So I've got 3 battlefields, or actually 2 battlefields here I'm going to start with. I'm going to move up to Antietam in Maryland, which isn't too far away. And then I'm going to do the Holy Grail for the last one, which is going to be Gettysburg.
Gettysburg. Well, right here, right now, I am going to invite you. Our little bash got canceled. I just found out today. It's called the Gettysburg Bash, and it is a paranormal gathering of like-minded. It's huge, and they gather for vets and for children fighting cancer. That's where all the proceeds go to, and it's handled by wonderful people, Steve and Pam Barry. And a lot of my paranormal investigator friends and like-minded like us, and all kind of everything from Bigfoot seekers to you name it are there. And I think you should go. And so it'll be this time, like this week next year, and I will be more than happy to introduce you to all the wonderful people I know from Keystone State Paranormal Society and Paranormal Elite. And if you want to go on an investigation, my friend, this is the place. I'll get you there. And
that would be awesome.
yeah, and it will be an experience like none other because it's 3 days, and you're in there with a lot of vets and all kinds of other stuff. It's just wonderful. The investigative minds that are there, these are wonderful people. There's a lot of them are police officers and, like I said, veterans, military from all branches, and just wonderful. And they all have heart, is what I think is just so important in this. And tech, forget about it, But we've had some wonderful experiences there. And I went there on my own a few years ago and had an experience that's just, I'll tell you about it another time or read the book. It's in there. But the last chapter of my book is all about Gettysburg and the things that happened there. And Mark Nesbitt is also there, and he's got about I think 20-something years. You're familiar with him, I'm sure.
Yes, I read some of his books. Yes,
I can introduce you to him. He's doing some wonderful stuff right now that I just think is fantastic. It's he's gone through the whole gauntlet of investigating the battlefields and of course EVPs and the books and everything else. Now he's moved on to paranormal crime scene investigation.
Oh,
I know. Just when you thought you heard everything.
Oh,
yeah, and it's so intriguing. Just to sit down to talk to Mark and Carol is absolutely that's his wife, just wonderful. And he tells a story. I tell you a little bit about it just to kind of wet your whistle a little bit. He goes into this. He was still be a guard or not a guard. What do you call it? Takes you around. That does the tours, the tour guide. So he's on the battlefield doing that, and one of the guys that was living in one of the houses on the battlefield, which is pretty much all of Gettysburg, calls him and says, Mark, you got to come over here. You're not going to believe what's happened. Well, the man has the old wooden floors because all these houses are, from the era. And there's something on the wooden floor that just popped up. And it's like a kind of a jelly type red goo. And he can't figure out where it's come from. And he says it's not sap. It's not, it's not the wood weeping, like wood will do sometimes. I mean, this is old wood. This is, 100 and something years old. So Mark goes and he looks. And, the guy's explaining to him everything that's happened and everything. So Carol, his wife, happens to come because she wants to see it too. And she says, get a sample of it. Well, they do. And they have, she's from the Gettysburg College there, and she has some friends to analyze it. Comes up human blood.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. It had human DNA in it. So
wow.
That intrigued him. Yeah, and it they wiped it up. There was nothing coming from the ceilings or anything like that. They wiped it up, and it's just an amazing story. And I think that's what got him intrigued. And he started to do the whole thing with very much like you did with EVPs. And Mark will tell you that you get some of your best EVPs on just a regular recorder, And yeah, and they started doing these sessions and basically talking to a victim of a murder or something like that and getting evidence and finding out of evidence that wasn't uncovered and where that might be, and paranormal crime scene investigations. Amazing. He's done some pretty famous cases too. So there's a plug for Mark. But Gettysburg,
that's cool.
Yeah, battlefields. Have you been to some? Have you tried? I know you had said that you want to go on an investigation, and I know you do some of your own. Now, tell us about that and what you do. Do you take a recorder out there? You go to cemeteries? What do you do?
Yeah, that's actually what I'm going to be doing. I've been to most of these battlefields as a kid, just, school field trip, that kind of thing. I actually went to Gettysburg just to visit it a couple of years ago with a friend of mine. Got to walk the battlefield, but knew about I read all of Mark Nesbitt's books up to that point and everything. And I actually had some friends who went to Gettysburg College I worked with. So basically what I plan to do here is I'm going to walk the battlefield with my tape recorder and my phone and see if I can capture any EVPs and take some pictures and see what I can get. And if anybody's there that'd be willing to go on record with me to discuss this, maybe a paranormal, maybe get some people to talk to me and just basically see what I can get. I've never really been on a official ghost hunt, as it were, but apparently from what I didn't think about this, somebody else pointed this out, everything that I've done for my book pretty much seems to be investigation that I didn't know I was doing, which makes sense to me now. But as far as like following a team around, I've never done that, and I've always wanted to do that, just to kind of get, just participate, but just observe really and just see what they get.
Right. It's just amazing, and I can introduce you to so many people. You're part of the crowd now, so. Just wonderful people, Dave and James from, like I said, Keystone State Paranormal Society, and, Ernie and Dave from Paranormal Inc. and all them. I mean, Elite, all of these different societies. And it's so cool because you hear all this time paranormal unity. And I think what everybody in this group really wants to do, and it's a huge, we're talking hundreds of people here. They do share information. They do share things that they got and try to put it together. And that has really gotten a lot of good information because, if one group goes in and gets something and then one group goes in at a different time and gets something and it's the same thing, or it's a continuation, which is even more interesting, of the same thing, that's happening, or the same person that they're talking to EVP wise. It's just really amazing. And then the mediums and the psychics and the wonderful people that are so gifted that also put their input in. It's just a wonderful thing. It's next level of this, and it's just fabulous. And of course my heart goes out, being ex-military myself, leave no man behind. So you've got the whole aspect of, okay, if we can figure out, is this residual, Is it just something that's playing on a loop, for whatever reason, off the rocks, off of the water, off whatever, just the time being right? Or is it an intelligent haunting? Is there somebody really there that's stuck? Or is it somebody just visiting and going, hey, this is just someplace I come back to because it meant something to me? It's great to get that separated, and if it is somebody that needs help and then you sit down and you try to do that, it's like, here, I'm here to help you. Would you like help? This is what's going on. Because a lot of them, I can't even explain to you being on someplace like the wheat field and having that just overwhelming rush of energy, the weight of it all, and thinking, my God, they're still here.
Yeah, exactly.
It's something else. So I look so forward to your book, and I hope that we can give you a chapter, and you might have it written by this time next year, but hey, write a third one and put your experience, because we got to get you to Gettysburg around these people, and I hope you will come.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate the invite, and I will hopefully be able to do that. That actually sounds like that. I would love to do something like that. That sounds like a really fun time.
It is. I mean, gosh, aren't we twisted? Just think, yeah, let's go hang out in a cellar in a 200-year-old house in the dark with a bunch of people. That's a good time, and it is. It really, really is. And if you can get a connection with somebody, and actually help a human being that happens to have been dead for 155 years, then that's an added bonus. So. Yeah, I hope you will. And, who knows, maybe I can come out there. I would love to. I've been to Fredericksburg and around there, but I absolutely love Virginia. And I've never been to Antietam or Shiloh, and places like that. So I envy you being so close to so many. I'm sitting here by Fort Monmouth.
Maybe we'll have to meet up at one.
That'd be great. I'm sitting here by Fort Monmouth right now. So if you ever want to see Molly Pitcher's Well and, tramps behind George Washington and the Battle of Monmouth and all those good things, Trenton and everything, gosh. But
Absolutely.
Isn't it odd? Isn't it odd though that I could be right here with these battlefields, but I'm still getting called to Gettysburg? So I don't know.
Absolutely. There's something there.
There is. And let me ask you this before I let you go. What do you think about reincarnation?
I believe it's possible. Mm-hmm. I'm not really sure that it happens, but I wouldn't doubt if it does. Mm-hmm. And hopefully that people, and I believe fully in karma. I've seen mm-hmm. karma work like right now. Mm-hmm. Wow. I've seen as John Lennon said, instant karma is going to get you. I've seen instant karma before. So I do believe in karma and the karmic wheel. I believe in that. Yeah. And reincarnation, why not?
Why not?
I mean, I wouldn't want to come back as a cockroach, but hey.
Yeah. Well, that's, I'm right there with you. And I think, when somebody asked me that once, I said, well, if I'm pressed for an answer, I would have to say I actually have more evidence for it than against it. But I don't know. But there's just so many intriguing stories. And I just keep wondering how come I'm getting pulled all the way to Gettysburg. I mean, it's 3 hours from here. But, instead of going 20 minutes to, Fort Monmouth, which I hold in high reverence, and I'm very big into history, and I can tell you names and dates and letters I've read and journals.
Wow.
But Gettysburg. So I'm like, why, And there's an intriguing story about that where a guy went to, kept getting called, and it was Gettysburg. And he went and he got an EVP. He was carrying a recorder. And just a guy, with a recorder said, I'll turn this on, bring this and that. He wasn't an investigator. He was just a guy visiting and wanted to record the sounds around him. And he got a clear EVP that said, "Hello, General. It's been a long time."
Oh, wow.
And the whole time he feels that, he's feeling, there's lots of feelings going on and things that he's like getting flash flashes, like I felt like I was in the battle, and I felt like this. He got the sharp pains in his chest. Just
Oh,
multiple things
wow.
happened to him while he was there. And he got some other ones too. I think it was horses, and it was like the the braying of a horse, and things like that on this tape. He goes home, and he wasn't very far. He winds up going back and doing it again, and he gets another voice. This one didn't call him General; it was something else. Gave him a name. Then he finds out, and this is like serendipity, he goes to a dentist office. This is after the fact, a couple weeks later, and right in front of him is this magazine that's got a story, and he opens it up, and it's a general with that name. It looks just like him. And he about fell out. And he died with 2 shots in the chest is what killed him. And those kind of stories will take everything you think you've learned over 40 years and just flip it and throw it back in the air again. Right? Is that not amazing? Man. I know. It's just so amazing, And I can't tell you, I promised you an hour and I've kept you on longer, but it has been an absolute delight to talk to you. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us before I let you go here?
Yes, if I could, I'd like to let anyone in your audience, yourself included, please email me KKILLEN, Killen, B as in boy, T as in Tom, KKillenBT@gmail.com about anything you want. You want some stories about ghosts? You have stories about drug and alcohol? Just stories about, hey, this is what I did today. I love talking to people, and I love talking to potential fans out there. So hit me up at my email address, and let's talk some paranormal.
Outstanding. Sounds wonderful. And we're going to have you back on here at Journey Through the Gate, and we're going to talk some more paranormal, because I think we've just scratched the surface tonight.
I was just absolutely. Anytime you want me back on, I'm happy to come back on. This has been a blast.
Yeah, isn't it? It's just wonderful. It's so nice to talk about something normal. It's just like, even if it's paranormal, it just feels so good to just delve back into the things that interest us and all those questions that are out there. And I usually have one question for my guests that are at least into this and have been into it for a while, and see what the reaction is. What has the dead taught you about living?
That's a good one. Wow. I think that they have taught me what's something I kind of already kind of suspected, but I never knew, is that we always learn. We never stop learning.
Ooh. Yeah.
So I think that they learn and absorb, and they know things, and there's precognitive things, but also they learn things on that side that they come back and teach us.
Wow. That's a great answer. That is a great answer. I love that. And they do. It does seem like they're still learning and still striving to be better, and, kind of vibrate on a higher frequency, if you will, And
Yes.
I think that normally when they come back here, if we do get answers, or able to communicate with those that have crossed over and come back, their message always seems to be love. Be kind to one another. It's okay.
Yes.
I forgive you. Forgive me. If something happened, if we did something, and just enjoy life. And boy, if we could get that message out right now, it would be a much more peaceful and loving society. Thank you so much, Kevin, for coming on. And, it's been wonderful.
Thank you for having me, Cisco. This has been a blast. I've enjoyed myself thoroughly.
Wonderful. The book is Ghosts and Me. It is available on all the, your Walmart, Barnes and Noble, and on, you said the publisher's website as well?
Yes, ozarkmountain.com. It can be purchased there as well in both ebook form and paperback.
I highly recommend it. curl up on the couch. If you have pets, surround yourself with them, because we know that they'll protect you while you read this, because you're going to get the chills and you're going to get a little scary. But you know what? It's just part of life. And I love you all, and thank you so much tonight. This has been awesome. Come back soon.
Thank you. I definitely will.
Well, listeners, that was so much fun. I thoroughly enjoyed that. Now, just to tell you a little bit more about Kevin. Kevin has won 5 Virginia Press Awards during his time in journalism. And having stepped away from journalism, Kevin now counsels recovering addicts. So I wanted to let you know that, because there's so much going on right now, people with the lockdown and perhaps dealing with, being separated from loved ones and friends, or your job, or, perhaps being touched by this whole mess. Those things can really overcome us. When you have an addiction, definitely can worsen or get started. So I wanted to let you know that connect with him. Possibly he can, connect you to someone in your area that can help, or just have a nice conversation with somebody who can help you through that. Because I know, like I said, any addiction, you can get out of it. You dug the hole one shovel load at a time, and you can fill that hole in, and you can climb out. And there's that story I always tell, and I'm speaking from experience here, not just myself, but within my family, loved ones. I mean, I couldn't sling a stone and not hit somebody I know that has dealt with this or been hurt by it. And everybody needs a hand. And there's that story that there was a man, and he fell in a deep hole, and he couldn't get out. And all the people were walking by, and life was going on, and he's just looking, and he's yelling for help, and nobody's listening. And nobody's really paying attention. Certainly nobody's reaching out to help. And, there was the local cop on the beat walked by, and he just reached down and said, "What are you doing in that hole? You need to get out of there. You can't stay there. You need to get out. By the time I get back, you better be out of there." And then there was this, a doctor and a nurse was walking down the street, and he said, "Man, that's not healthy for you to be in there. You need to get out of there." And, then there was a pastor and a priest that went by, and, he's reached up, he said, "Help me." And they said, "Look, you've learned, the way out. You need to do, whatever. You need to get out of that hole yourself. You need to have faith, and you need to pull yourself up." And they kept on going. And then all of a sudden, he sees a friend of his go by, and he goes, "Hey, Bob, it's you. Listen, I'm in this hole, and I can't get out." And he said, "Buddy, what are you doing down there?" He goes, "I fell in. I don't know the way out." Bob says, "Hang on a second." And he jumps in the hole. And the guy looks at him. He goes, "Bob, what did you do? Oh, my gosh, now we're both in here, and now we're both stuck." And he goes, "Ha, wait a second. I've been in this hole, and I know the way out. Follow me." So if you've got somebody who's been in that hole, and they know the way out, buddy, you better hang on to that friend. And you learn by talking how they got out and listening. But first you got to reach out. So I just saw that in Kevin's bio, and I thought this is a good time to tell you that. You can do it. You can do it. Pull yourself up. So reach out, and his book is Ghosts and Me, and you can find it in all the places that he mentioned. And I wanted to tell you again, my book is out there, and there is quite a few good stories in there and experiences, not only of mine, but of Steve Stockton's, who is a dear friend of mine. And, we asked Kevin at the end there, what have we learned from the dead about living. And I can tell you this. It has been my experience that messages from loved ones who have crossed over are just that. They're of love. They're of caring and kindness. And they're more worried about you than you are about them. You know, they understand your grief, and they understand that you miss them. And they tell you, I'm here. I'm here every time you think of me, I'm here. Every time you have a memory of how we laughed and shared that movie or that ride or that place we went to, or we bought that dress or threw that football out front, I remember too, because you connect into my energy. So why don't we focus right now, with all the craziness that's going on, why don't we focus on that love energy? I think right now the world almost seems to be succumbing to fear and the unknown and worry and locking in and all of that. So ground, my friends. Ground yourself. Take off those shoes. Dance in your kitchen. Go outside. Plant flowers. Make fists with your toes in the grass. Listen to the birds sing. Get out there. Laugh. Sing. Dance. Hug your loved one if you can, if you're there. And if you can't, think of them. Think of something happy. Think of something that makes you laugh. And before you know it, you'll be out of that dark hole. Okay? Because depression is a hole too. And fear can start filling it in. And we're not going to fear. We're going to love. We're going to be kind. We're going to do kind acts for one another until we feel better inside. Start with yourself, and it'll echo out across the world. Believe me, it's possible. We've done it before. Start with that divine spark and let it shine, listeners. Let it shine. And keep your feet under those covers. Keep your closet doors shut, because there are things that go bump in the night.